2.
This meeting is being recorded.
All right, so good morning, everyone, or afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. I know that we have folks really from coast to coast and everywhere in between, which is really, really exciting for us. I'm Becca Blazak, and I manage our partnerships at Cooperatives. So that means I spend a lot of my time talking to procurement professionals like you all across the country, learning what your day looks like, learning how you use cooperative contracts, and taking those learnings and bringing them back to my team at Cooperatives to help them understand, or to help us understand, how we can continue to support public procurement professionals. So I know there are a lot of familiar faces here today, and it's great to see folks that we already know. But if you're new to Cooperatives, I want to just give a little bit more information and context on who we are and kind of why we do these events. So first and foremost, Cooperatives is a free search engine for government cooperative contracts. That means that you can discover contracts on our site from over 300 different sources. So think Omnia, Sourcewell, NASPO Value Point, all those national purchasing cooperatives that you may be familiar with. But the really cool thing is that we're adding in a lot of state and local data every day. So states like California, South Carolina, Washington, New York, these are all in Cooperatives. We don't have all 50 yet, but I think we're pretty close. And we're also adding in a lot of local data. So John is joining us from Dorchester County today in South Carolina. And so, for example, all of John's contracts from Dorchester County are also discoverable on Cooperatives. And the reason that we built it like this, and the thing that we think is so exciting here, is that we're hoping that this is a real time-saving tool and a great first stop when you're thinking about, whether or not to go out to bid. Is there a contract for that? Can I save myself some time? We understand from procurement professionals that we've talked to that it can take hours and hours of phone calls and internet searches to find something that you can use. And this is really meant to help manage that piece of the process. So, in addition to creating this free search engine, we are exploring how other free educational resources like this event can continue to support the procurement ecosystem. I get to spend my days talking to procurement folks across the country, and they're all doing amazing work, like what John is going to share about, and I get to hear that. And so we wanted to really lean into the spirit of collaboration that already exists within the public procurement ecosystem and create a space where we can share those learnings kind of across agencies, build new connections, and understand what new tools exist that you can use to level up your own cooperative procurement strategy within your agency. So today, as you know, we're talking to John Tigert, who's a purchasing services manager with Dorchester County in South Carolina, about his recent experience being the lead agency on a cooperative contract for job order contracting. So by the end of the event here, the goal is for everyone to have a better understanding of cooperative procurement and also job order contracting and how those fit together. We're going to talk through the benefits and challenges of being a lead agency on a contract. I know John and I were just talking through a lot of the complexities and nuances that come with that. He's also going to share some tactics for leveling up your own cooperative procurement strategy. I noticed that there were a lot of folks who signed up that were new to the world of cooperative procurement. So we want to make sure that we give you some best practices that you can use, even if you're not ready to be a lead agency yourself yet. And we're also going to talk about how you can leverage Cooperatives to sort of maximize your procurement strategy and save time and money. So I'm just flagging that, as we get into the conversation, we're gonna go ahead and look at Cooperatives at one point when we have some context and some understanding of how job order contracting works, and so that you can really sort of see the power of Cooperatives as it relates to discovering these contracts. Okay, so 2 more final things as we get started here, and then I'm gonna loop John into this conversation, most importantly. As we go, please drop your questions into the chat. So on the Zoom bar, you should see sort of down at the bottom a little chat bubble. If you have questions that pop up as we go, drop those in there. We want to make sure that we answer them all, but there will be time at the end to do Q&A, and you can turn your microphone on and sort of shout those out. But if they occur to you as we go, that's where you should drop them. Okay, I think that is sort of all the context that we need here. Let's go ahead and get started. So John, I'd love for you to just give a quick intro so that everyone knows who you are, a little bit more about your experience of procurement, and maybe also why you're an advocate for collaboration.
Sure. So I am the purchasing services manager for Dorchester County, South Carolina, as Becca mentioned. So Dorchester County is county here in the Charleston metro area that is experiencing pretty rapid growth coming up from Charleston to the west. And so we've been pretty busy and experienced, some pretty immense population growth and which kind of, and I'll mention this later, led to the need for this type of program that we put in place. But I would say we're, kind of a mid-sized county here in South Carolina. And before I came here to South Carolina, I was in St. Louis County, Missouri. I was the procurement manager there for a while. And before that was a senior buyer for St. Louis County, Missouri. So St. Louis County is the largest county in the state of Missouri. And St. Louis County and Dorchester County, they're both counties, but different sizes and both kind of in a different stage of growth. And so had very different approaches to construction procurement, as well as cooperative procurement in general. So as far as an advocate for collaboration, I think that, it's just something I've been passionate about ever since I came into local government was, we need to find better ways to work together and help our neighbors out, a little bit more. And so as I've gotten into procurement, it's kind of the perfect field for that because we have such a great network in public procurement of folks who just want to help each other out, help out our colleagues. So that's kind of the passion that I have for collaboration.
Awesome. Okay, John, let's start with some basics here. So like I said, we've got some folks that are newer to kind of cooperative procurement and kind of looking to just sort of build that baseline and understanding. So let's just talk through some basic definitions here. If you were defining cooperative procurement to someone new, how would you describe it?
Well, as you know, Becca, I think there's a couple different ways you can talk about cooperative procurement. And the first would be, if there's an agency that I want to partner with on a procurement, maybe we're going to combine our volume together, and we're going to put out a single contract for that. Mm-hmm. That would be one way to talk about cooperative procurement. Another way that's probably more prevalent nowadays, at least within the last 10 or 15 years, is piggybacking, and so what that is basically if I put out a contract and I have a competitive process, an RFP or an IFP that I put out, and you're the next county over, instead of putting out your own RFP for those same services, you use my competitive process. You piggyback off of my process. And so it is, sharing those resources and creating efficiency by sharing a competitive process in that way.
Yeah, and it seems like, that use of piggybacking is really kind of increasing in popularity over the past few years. And I think, COVID probably really threw that into light speed, with all of the different problems that procurement teams have been experiencing and challenges over the last couple of years. So John, can you talk a little bit about how Dorchester County utilizes cooperative procurement? And then we'll talk a little bit about your sort of journey through that in general.
Sure. Well, I would say pretty evolved down the path of cooperative procurement. I mean, there's not really a whole lot of limits for us. So we use cooperative procurement for just about anything you could think of. And I would say that the majority of that is, we're huge users of the state of South Carolina contracts. So the state of South Carolina has a pretty robust cooperative contract database for local governments in the state to use. And so we use that very frequently. But, are no stranger to, Omnia Partners and Sourcewell and the Equalis Group and some of those like that, that offer those big databases of cooperative contracts for agencies across the country to use. So just about anything, we've done, everything from, field lighting to just anything you can think of. We've purchased just about off of a cooperative contract of some kind or another.
Yeah, that's super helpful when your agency is really kind of open to everything, but we know that every agency is sort of different in sort of what they can utilize and how to utilize it, when to utilize it. So knowing that there's just all these options out there is probably step one of being a helpful thing to know. Okay, so, when you and I were talking about getting ready for this event, you mentioned that, when you were at St. Louis County, you were in a really different place in terms of how you were able to utilize cooperative contracts. It was a little bit newer. And when you came to Dorchester County, you had a lot to work with and a lot to build on. So can you talk about sort of the difference between those two and sort of best practices for agencies that are maybe just getting started versus ones that are looking to level up their own purchasing strategy?
Sure. Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with your terminology there of leveling up, because I think that's kind of the mindset, because every agency is going to be different. Every agency is going to start from a different place, or have different ordinances or statutes in place where you may or may not be able to do certain things. So, but I think having the mindset of, okay, here's where I'm at, but how can I maybe take it to the next level, when it comes to my cooperative procurement strategy. So to your point, St. Louis County, they had just had some ordinance changes, when I started there as a senior buyer, that enabled them to use cooperative procurement. So they were starting off fresh kind of with it. And, so like some of the first things we had to do was get with our county counselor's office and say, okay, this is what the ordinance says. What does that mean? It says we can only use cooperative contracts that have a process substantially similar to ours. What does that actually mean, on a realistic level? And so we were starting off at square one. But then, around by the time I left, we were starting to procure lots of different things off of cooperative contracts. We did roofing off of cooperative contracts and all kinds of things. So really had gotten to the level of leveling up to kind of full adoption of cooperative procurement as a procurement method. Now, when I came here to Dorchester County, they had such a great foundation in place already. From having cooperative, being able to use cooperative contracts and having already established that, that mindset of having a strategy in place, but then, even including cooperative language and all of their solicitations already, they were already doing even that. And so really for me, when I came here, it was more about, okay, well, again, how can we take it to the next level? And so, for example, one of the things we did was we published our cooperative contracts on our website. And then how can I take it to the next level? And so I reached out and actually published them on CoProcure, so that it's available to even a wider audience, because, I want people to use these contracts. So, and then the job order contracting program was, again, kind of another step up. So it's just, how can we take that next step to increase, the collaboration? And so I think you hit the nail on the head with that kind of mindset.
Yeah, and I really loved kind of the framework that you just laid out there, or sort of like, or different steps along the way, right? Like one is at a very basic level, understanding what your procurement code is, how you can use cooperative contracts, where those sort of fit in. Two, if you are adding cooperative language to your own contracts can be really helpful to make it easier for neighboring agencies to use your contracts and really support that spirit of collaboration. Next level up is publishing those contracts, whether that's on your own site or on places like CoProcure, to really increase that distribution. And then finally, we're leveling up to something much bigger and more complex, which is where we're going to dig into now, which is becoming the lead agency on a contract and understanding, how that continues to drive collaboration within different regions and within your agency, I would guess.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into that a bit. Okay, so traditionally it's been really hard, or at least this is what I hear all the time. It's hard to use cooperative agreements on construction procurements. Can you talk a little bit about why that is?
Well, I think it's just because, okay, if I put out a bid for let's say I put out a bid for a spec building or something like that, here in Dorchester County, if you try to build that same building in, a different county in Arizona, you got different site conditions, different permitting requirements, different, program requirements, maybe, there's too many, it's differing conditions, and it's hard to pin down costs or to use a country, it's apples and oranges almost in some sense. And so I think that's part of it. Not being able to have, the labor rates are so different across the country. Obviously here is a lot different than California or New York City. And so I think there's just a lot of challenges in that regard. Where you have seen some success with construction procurement is where it's narrowed or focused on a particular trade. And so, for example, I mentioned roofing as one where, there's some cooperative contracts out there with Trimco and the Garland Company where you can do roofing. A 20-foot section of metal roof is the same in California, and Dorchester County. Maybe different installation practices or something like that, different labor rates, but you can start to get more specific with those. Another one would be like HVAC repair and replacement. There's Train has a big HVAC repair and replacement cooperative contract. So you're starting to see it, focused on some trades more than general construction.
Right. And that's definitely something I've heard from folks in conversations that I've had, which is, for materials or parts, you need to grab something quickly. You don't want to go out to bid, or maybe, it's an emergency. That's where cooperative contracts can come in handy with construction projects. But what can also be really useful is this sort of idea or, programs around job order contracting. So how do you describe what job order contracting is for folks that are new to that?
Yeah, so I'm going to do my best. It can be pretty complex, and I'm sure that this will come up later. But I mean, I spent a couple months just kind of researching and asking questions before I made a jump on this myself. But job order contracting is an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contracting system for construction. And so by that, of course, we mean there's no guaranteed number of projects. There's not guaranteed at any particular time. It's an on-call contract. If some people may be familiar with on-call contracts, it's basically like an on-call contract for construction, and it's based on a unit price book of thousands of construction tasks that are pre-priced for the regional labor market. And so that's kind of how it works. And there's a lot more detail than that, but I'm trying to sum it up very concisely.
Yeah, definitely. I think when I was reading about it also in preparation for this event, it seemed like job order contracting is a way to sort of streamline some of those smaller projects around like maintenance and repair, and maybe smaller construction projects, things that would be more replicable across entities or regions. And that way you're not going out to bid every single time, right? Is that kind of
Right.
how you would describe the benefit of using a job order contracting cooperative contract?
Yeah, so I mean, there's quite a few benefits, but you hit the nail on the head with the main one, which is that you're creating efficiency by not having to bid out projects on a consistent basis. Once you have those umbrella on-call contracts in place, you can work directly with the contractor, which also has the added benefit of reducing the amount of change orders as well. And so that's one of the main benefits, is just creating that efficiency where instead of going through a 30 or 45-day long bidding process, you can work directly with the contractor to start the project. Another benefit I would say is especially in this market, is because those job orders are based on the unit price book. Your pricing is, at least in our program, and I believe in most others, it is firm for the year of that contract. And so like our program runs January 1st to December 31st. If I go out and get a proposal now for a construction project, and I don't want to start that project till October, it's going to be the same price in October that it is now. And so with all the volatility in the market right now, having something like that as a tool in our toolbox, I think is pretty critical. And then the other thing I'll mention, just because this is, and rightfully so, increasing in importance nowadays, is if you have any kind of set aside program, a disadvantaged business enterprise type program, job order contracting is great for that, because you can mandate, the subcontracting goals and things like that. And it helps you get to those goals for those DBE programs. So there's a lot more benefits, but
Yeah.
Again, trying to be concise.
Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, so what I heard was, efficiency, regional collaboration, fixed pricing in some cases, and also the opportunity to support, small and diverse businesses through subcontractors. Sounds like some top ones that are pretty awesome benefits to have. All right, so you decided to become a lead agency on a job order contracting cooperative contract for Dorchester County. What does that mean? What does that look like? What does it mean to be a buyer lead agency?
Sure. So when we were researching this and trying to determine whether or not to implement this program here, one of the questions that we had to answer was, we're going to create this program for Dorchester County no matter what. But if we're going to go to all this trouble and go to all this work to do it, why not kind of make it a statewide program as well? Because that's kind of the model. There's been some very successful models, like for example, down in the state of Georgia, where they have statewide job order contracting programs, and other states as well. But and so that was kind of the thought process that we went through. There's a secondary component to it, which is again, trying to always think as a public procurement professional, how to bring value back to your organization. And by using a statewide contracting model, we were able to charge a small fee to statewide users, which then goes back to help pay for our costs for the program. And so, bringing that value and that additional revenue back to the county was also an important consideration as well.
Gotcha. So yeah, I guess to recap that, you knew you were going to do this. So by making it a cooperative contract, it made it more accessible for entities,
Yes.
local entities all across the state of South Carolina. And there's an additional benefit here to Dorchester County, which is leveling up your own strategy and being able to raise some revenue from this contract potentially to continue to fund,
That's right.
additional programs in the county. Because you're putting all that work into that process. Okay, so that's a really cool way to think about the value, bringing value, I think, to an agency, leveling up that process or that strategy internally. So a lot of work went into doing this, and I think that's probably where some folks have questions. So how did you decide? What research did you do to determine that this was the right type of contract for Dorchester County to lead, and who did you decide to work with on it, and why?
Okay. Yeah. So this was something that I had been talking about with a colleague of mine. She had put the bug in my ear and given me the idea, hey, you should really think about job order contracting. Have you ever thought about doing something like that before? And so from that seed kind of grew a plant, of all this research that I had to do to find out whether it would be a good fit, for our county. And once I was really sold that I thought it would be something that could bring value back to the county, I had to, of course, we created a business case for my manager and their my one over manager, and brought them together to talk about it, and they got on board, and then had to go to the county administrator and get him on board. And so there was a kind of a process that we went through internally, just getting to the point where we had made the final decision that, yeah, this is something we want to do, but that was also an exciting process. And once we got through to that point, we had pretty much decided by that point that we were going to partner with a company called the Gordian Group, which is a company that's done this for a very long time, and has a very significant track record of success. So we actually used the cooperative contracts from the Equalis Group to contract with Gordian to serve as our consultant / program administrator for the program. And so they're our partner kind of in the program. And from there, it was just a lot of back and forth with Gordian developing an RFP. We had to divide the state of South Carolina up into different regions. And so, a lot of thought went into, okay, this metro area, pool of contractors can serve, this many counties. And, even looking at the map, outside the state, right? Because Charlotte, North Carolina is kind of on the northern South Carolina border. And then you have Augusta, Georgia, and Savannah, Georgia, down in the south. And so I'm looking at how we divided those regions up was, an important part of that process as well.
And why did you, what was the thinking behind dividing the state into regions? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the original thought was, you've got contractors in a particular region, that aren't going to want to do business, on the other side of the state.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you have contractors in Greenville, they're not going to want to go to Columbia probably for a lot of business, especially local, subcontractors and things like that. So that was the rationale behind dividing the state up into 7 regions, kind of localizing those pools.
That feels like a really thoughtful approach in terms of how to structure that contract, not just making it available statewide, but thinking about who or what vendors are available in certain areas of the state to actually serve them. Is that kind of par for the course when you create this type of contract, or was that something that you sort of thought about to make it more accessible?
I'm not 100% positive. I know that for ours, it was something that was talked about from the beginning. But I know, like, for example, some state governments have job order contracting programs, and I would think that it's probably divided up by region. Maybe there's somebody here that's more of an expert than me that can drop in the chat, what their experience has been with job order contracting, but in that regard. But that's I would think so, because that makes most sense to me, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So folks, if you're listening and you do know, you do have experience, definitely drop it in the chat, and there'll also be time to sort of throw that out there when we do that Q&A.
Absolutely.
So there was another really important thing I wanted to circle back to what you just said there. You talked about how you pitched this idea internally. So, and I think this is something that we've talked a lot about or heard a lot from procurement professionals, which is like, I have this idea. How do I bring it to my manager? What does that process look like? And I think this kind of cuts across different ideas. This doesn't have to just be a job order contracting pitch. You might just be pitching, putting piggybackable language in your contracts, right? So how did you approach that with your manager? What did you find successful in sort of teeing up new ideas and getting them approved?
Sure. So, I mean, that process for me just looked like, I didn't really have a whole lot of convincing to do with my manager, because we're pretty on the same page with most things. So we have a weekly one-on-one meeting. And so I just sat down with her and was talking about the program. We talked through, for a couple of weeks. And then I created a business case, where we sat down and we wrote down, here's what job order contracting is, here's the benefits that it could bring to the county. Here's what we would have to do, in order to achieve our goals, and created that business case for, the deputy county administrator that I had to get on board first. Mm-hmm. And then from there, for the county administrator, reduce that even further down to basically a 1 page with some bullet points, and then had to get him on board as well. So it was a lot of, kind of thinking about what's the key information that they need to know to make a decision, because they don't have a lot of time, of course they're busy, and presenting that to them in a concise but impactful way.
Yeah, that's super helpful. I think that's great advice also just for folks thinking about, how to put together an idea that they want to share with their team or their manager.
Good Lord.
All right. So, oh, hey, Sharon, it looks like your microphone's on if you want it. There we go. Thanks. So, in terms of challenges that you faced throughout this process, for folks that maybe are thinking about leveling up their own strategy or becoming a lead agency on a cooperative contract, what would you kind of make sure that, or what would you have wanted to know before you did this? Or what were some of the challenges you faced along the way?
Well, there's a couple things. I think one thing, which I'm thankful we did do, was do our research beforehand before you go and present a business case for something, because the worst thing, not the worst thing, but you don't want to be in the room trying to pitch an idea and they ask a question, you don't know the answer, or you can't speak to a particular area. So I spent a lot of time researching and talking to Gordian, and kind of making sure that I was a subject matter expert as much as I possibly could be before, I went to present that internally. Another thing that I think if I had to do it over again, I probably would do differently is that I would involve my end users a little bit more earlier in the process. We kind of brought them in after we had already decided that this is what we were going to do. And just if you've never experienced job order contracting before, it can be quite a bit to grasp. And I think we had some trouble getting some buy-in because people just weren't quite understanding what we were talking about. And so and we're still kind of dealing with the after effects of that. So I think if I could go back and do it over again, I would have some of those end users involved earlier in my research process.
Yeah, that is such a great point. And Darren commented on it in the chat too. Involving your end users who are really kind of those subject matter experts and the folks that are really your clients internally is such a good piece of advice for folks kind of thinking about any, I think, idea that they're thinking about pitching. Okay, so maybe most importantly here, you've put all this time and effort into creating these contracts. You put a lot of intention and thought behind making them accessible to agencies across the state of South Carolina. We know you publish your contracts, but how can folks find them or other job order contracting contracts that are out there?
Sure. Well, I know I mentioned this earlier, so I'm sorry to be a broken record, but we do, like you said, we do publish it on our website. But how I have felt, we're able to get more reach is to, partner with Cooperatives as far as publishing our contracts on Cooperatives. And I know if you go on Cooperatives and you search for job order contracting, Dorchester County's contracts will pop up. So of course you can't use it unless you're in the state of South Carolina. So I don't know how many people on the call are from the state of South Carolina. But certainly if you are, there you go. They're right there for you to use. So you don't have to go to my website and hit all the links to get to where I have my cooperative contracts,
Right.
Just go to CoProcure and type it in and it pops right up. So.
You know what? Let's go ahead and do that now. This is the right time to show everybody what that looks like. So let's go ahead and look really quickly here at what you can find on CoProcure and how to do that. So I'm sharing my screen here. This is the Cooperatives homepage. So if you go to coprocure.us, this is exactly what you'll see today. So for folks that are new, this is a search engine, just like Google or maybe Kayak or Expedia if you've used those, but for cooperative contracts, you don't have to implement anything. You don't have to create a login. It's just a landing page with a search bar, just like those other search engines. So if we were going to look for John's job order contracting cooperative contracts, I'll be really specific with my search query here. I'm going to do job order contracting general construction. I've got a South Carolina zip code. And if I was John, I would put Dorchester County in here, but I'll just let the Cooperatives team know it's me. So right up front, here we go, Dorchester County contracts for job order contracting. What you're seeing are top hits that are filtered by your zip code. And so we can see, that these are the ones that we were looking for in this case right up front. When I click view contract, I'm going to discover more information about what's covered in this contract. So here we can see the suppliers that have been awarded. We've got a little more information about the contract over here, including the contract number, the expiration date, and then the source where this information came from. So this would take you right back to John's website where this all originated from. The very cool thing here on CoProcure's site is that you can look at contract documents directly through this PDF viewer. So we're really working hard to make sure that everything is all in one place and easy for you to review and start that due diligence process, understand what's available, and just kind of get the ball rolling in a really quick and efficient way. So you can navigate through all these documents using these little arrows. You can download them individually using this little download button in the PDF viewer. Here's that task catalog for everything that's covered here. You can also download all the documents at once by using the download all button. And we have options to get in touch with both the supplier and with the lead agency on the contract. So, if you had questions for the supplier about quotes or specifications, that's when you would use this. And for questions maybe for John around compliance or other sort of questions around how the contract was structured, that's what this form is great for. Both of those, what happens is CoProcure gets a notification that says, hey, a buyer wants to get in touch with a certain supplier or with John at Dorchester County. And then we go ahead and we make an intro for you. So that way it's all managed in your inbox. You don't have to come back to CoProcure to do any of that. But let's say you're outside of the state of South Carolina, or so I'll just go ahead and do my zip code here. And you want to see what job order contracting cooperative contracts are out there for you. You could actually even just type in JOC. And what we should get here is, a ton of different contracts for job order contracting. So I can see HGAC BUY, Omnia, TIPS, Equalis. So, there really are quite a few of these already out there and open for folks to use. We can be a little more specific with our search. John mentioned roofing earlier. So if I type in JOC roofing, now I'm going to pull up some more specific roofing contracts. I can also use filters on CoProcure to filter my search down. So if I wanted to only see contracts from, let's say, Omnia and maybe TIPS, I can filter down for Omnia and TIPS. And there I've got, 2 contracts that I could explore more deeply. The other very cool thing here, John mentioned, supplier diversity being important. And I know many agencies have goals. So if you're looking to see diverse suppliers that have been awarded these cooperative contracts, you can use the diversity filters on here to discover those as well. So lots of great stuff to sort of explore in terms of being able to find these job order contracting contracts that are all in one place here. Just highlighting too that CoProcure, you can use it for more than just job order contracting. My favorite search here is welding pants. So here we're going to uncover contracts for welding pants. Even when the contract title is really broad like this, MRO, if we have photos of the specific product you're searching for, we're going to show it here as confirmed in the scope of the contract. So you should be able to very quickly confirm right up front that a contract actually has something that you're looking for. This also works for services. So let's say I wanted to do temporary staffing. Here we go. Another, oh, and I've still got my diversity filters on. So lots of temporary staffing contracts are available with lots of small and diverse suppliers on them as well. So here you can see, again, lots of different options to compare for temporary staffing. That is a very quick overview of how you can use Cooperatives to discover cooperative contracts in general. And happy to sort of answer any questions about that later on, or if folks want to set up a demo for your team or something a little more in depth, there are lots of ways to do that, and we'll share that after the event. But John, as John mentioned, he does we do publish Dorchester County contracts on there. So if you're in South Carolina, you can find those all on Cooperatives. State of South Carolina is also on there, like I said, along with many others. Okay, so John, we're going to wrap this up here and get into some Q&A from the rest of the group. So before we go, I want to kind of circle back to, those ways that we can level up that purchasing strategy. What are your sort of like tips and tricks for folks kind of thinking about collaboration, thinking about cooperative procurement? What would you really want to drive home for everyone here?
Well, I think first of all, just to not understate the value of a tool like Cooperatives, which has helped me, save quite a bit of time over the last, couple of years since I've been using it. Just being able to find cooperative contracts instead of having to go to 10 different websites, Omnia Partners and Tips, and look for a contract and look at, try to dig all that stuff up. Having one place I can go to search for cooperative contracts has been really, really impactful, just in saving me, so many hours every month of research time. Another thing, I try to mention this every time I talk about collaboration and cooperative procurement is, really encourage agencies to really consider making cooperative language part of your solicitations boilerplate. Not every contract is a great cooperative contract, and there's nothing saying that, it's not in your boilerplate, and it just doesn't really apply to we included in all of our contracts, or even we just built a canine shelter a few weeks ago, and a new canine shelter, and that was technically a cooperative contract, even though for some of the reasons I stated earlier, nobody's going to come and take that contract and actually use it, but it's just part of our boilerplate. And we do that because we want to try to be good neighbors, and if there's something that our neighboring counties or one of our cities that's within our county can use, we want them to have access to that and be able to use it. And so that's something that I would encourage you to consider. And actually, I think that Cooperatives has some examples of that language on their website. So I don't know if maybe somebody on the Cooperatives team could find that link and drop it in the chat.
I just did.
But I always like to have it linked in the chat when I talk to Cooperatives, because I think it's a good resource for you to take to your county councilor or city attorney or whoever it may be. I would say, hey, can you modify this for us to include in our solicitations or our contracts?
Yeah, and I did just drop that in the chat for folks that are interested. It includes, I think, John's actual language from Dorchester County is listed in there, along with Portland, Kansas City, and a few others. So quite a few different examples to look through in case that's helpful.
Yep.
Awesome. And then one other thing too, I think the other thing I've heard from procurement folks is to think about how to build your network and continue to be able to have conversations like this. John, how have you thought about building your network and connecting with peers, even beyond your region? Yeah, no, events like this one are great for that purpose, to try to get together and listen to peers in the field and learn and chat, through the chat box, and can you email me this, or here's my contact info, or get in touch. The Insight forums, of course, that NIGP offers are a great resource as well to network and to find answers to questions and things like that. So, and local NIGP chapters, the usual things are all great resources that I encourage us all to take advantage of. Yeah, definitely. I know NIGP has those local chapters kind of all over the place. So I've heard that those can be very helpful. And we will also share John's contact info following the event for folks that want to get in touch with John and have sort of a more in-depth conversation. There was a lot of complexity and nuance that we just did not have time to kind of get into today. So if you're interested in kind of going down the rabbit hole on job order contracting, John, I know, is definitely available to chat about that. Okay, I'm going to look through the chat here, and it looks like there are a couple of questions, and actually Chris raised their hand. So Chris, if you want to jump in with a question, that would be great. Go ahead and turn your mic on and just throw it out there.
Hi, have to excuse me, I'm a little gravelly, a little bit of laryngitis here. I'm the purchasing agent for the city of Milpitas, California, about 73,000 folks just north and east of San Jose. A few things I want to throw in. I have a very small group, me, one buyer, a temp, and an admin. And we love co-ops. We use them like crazy wherever we can. It saves so much time and energy. Once in a while, I get into a situation where I have to compare one co-op to another, but our city likes it so much. Our city attorney is all in favor of it. We've rewritten our municipal code. And in doing that, one of the things we did was to include a public agency clause, which is very broad speak for anybody who meets the definition under government contract code 6500, counties, special districts, state, Omnia partners, any of those that meet that definition, we can use them. I buy everything from pens and pencils to $1 million fire trucks with co-ops. And if anybody wants to talk about that, you just contact me, Chris Schroeder, City of Milpitas, 408-586-3161. I'll be happy to talk about it. I do have a question though. I have always wanted to do co-ops for public contract work, but our city attorney has always said no. Maybe the public contract code, I thought it was national. Maybe it's only the state of California, but the public contract code, excuse me a second, public contract code says anything over $5,000 has to be bid, with certain exceptions. If you are anybody familiar with CUPCA, Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act, if you adopt that, you can do public contracting, $60,000 a pop all day long. But other than that, I don't know how you do it. How do you do, just in a nutshell, how do you get around that $5,000 limit?
Are you talking about just for construction service?
Just for construction.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what I would say is every state is going to be different. You know, for example, I know in the state of Virginia, there's a state statute that limits you to only spending $6 million a year on job order contracting programs. So like where they came up with 6 million versus, you know, some other number, I don't know, you know, and in some states, like I know in the lead up to this, Beck, I think we had gotten a communication from someone from New Jersey who said that, you know, same kind of deal. Yeah. We're not permitted to use it in the state of New Jersey. So just every state is going to be different.
Okay.
What you can and can't
so
do
you have the public contract code in South Carolina, or maybe that's just specific to California? Sorry, to California.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. There's nothing in the state of South Carolina statutes that would, you know, disallow us from starting our program.
Well, it's probably specific to California.
Yeah, and it's the type of thing too, maybe where attorneys, you know, every once in a while they disagree. So I don't know.
No kidding.
That could be part of it too.
Yeah. Okay, I won't take any more of your time. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Chris. And
Thanks.
yeah, if there are any other California folks here that maybe know the answer to Chris's question, feel free to drop that in the chat. And then, Darren Musey is also here, who is a longtime procurement professional. Darren, do you have any thoughts on this as well? I know Darren brings a ton of expertise from the space. Not to put you on the spot, Darren.
Oh, you're muted, Darren.
Muted.
Gotcha. Hello, everyone. I don't want to steal any of John's presentation overview today, but he's spot on in exactly how the processes work. And my comment in there as well. Each agency is going to have its own guidelines, regulations, laws, statutes, you name it. Mm-hmm. And it's incumbent upon the procurement professional to do their research to make sure that they can move on and forward. And I'm in Kansas. I was in Kansas when I was working, and I can't tell you how many weird things were in place. that kept us from being able to move forward. So research first, but then also sell internally on the benefits of cooperative procurement. And John gave a really good example there, talking with his boss on a regular basis. It's a topic of discussion, and it's important. As the gentleman from California just mentioned, you're going to find some organizations that will love it and have to take advantage of it if they're going to be successful. Others in major metropolitan areas have a huge pool of opportunities within that, where in some cases using a cooperative agreement may not be the right thing to go because it may be perceived that that's going to cut out local competition. So going back to the research part and then communication is plus.
Thanks, Darren. Also, always really helpful context. Darren sits on our advisory council at CoProcure and make sure that we talk about things that are relevant and important and gives us lots of great advice. So we always appreciate that. Okay, there are a couple of really great questions in the chat I want to try and get to, John, really quickly here. So from Rita, did the county have specific projects budgeted for work when the RFP was issued, or were those projects included within your RFP?
Yeah, so this is an IDIQ contract, so nothing is guaranteed, no kind of volume or anything like that is guaranteed. We did, through kind of the question and answer process of publishing, or managing the RFP, we did state that our intention was to use the job order contracting program at Dorchester County for our facility maintenance and repair budget, which is somewhere last year was somewhere around $1.5 million. Next year it's going to be around $4 million. But again, in no way was that a guarantee of any kind of volume. So that was kind of we had a question and answer, during the RFP process about that. That's how we answered it. But again, it is IDIQ, so there was no guarantee of any kind of volume of projects.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that. Okay, I'm going to move through these quick so that we get through them. So from Sharon, so Sharon says, you mentioned goals during the presentation and that contracts are available with minority businesses, women-owned businesses, but how did you utilize your own local and diverse businesses in another agency's area? So how did you figure that out?
Yeah, so the way the program is set up, if you're in another county and you have some kind of DBE program, you can dictate to those contractors that are set up for your region, hey, any job orders that we do through our county, have to be 15% minority subcontractors and 10% women-owned, subcontractors. You can dictate the terms of that. So that's how you bring in that component is it's enabled as part of the program. You can mandate that.
Yeah, and that's a great call out to sort of think about that equity piece of working with local and diverse businesses. All right, one more question in here from Ashley. Have you been through a procurement audit since you rolled out the cooperative contract with Gordian? And if so, was it a struggle to explain this process and how it fits within your code to your auditor? And then also, is the county on the latest version of the South Carolina procurement code, the one that was enacted in 2019?
Sure. So this is a brand new program for us. So it literally just started January 1st of this year. So, the answer to that question would be no, not yet. Having said that, we're as a county in South Carolina, we have our own procurement code. So that's what we follow for our procurement. And our procurement code has a very, kind of, I would say, liberal provision in it for cooperative contracting and cooperative procurement. It basically says that we can kind of do what we want in conjunction with other public agencies. We can administer, sponsor, conduct, participate in, the whole 9 yards, a cooperative contract with other public agencies. So that's kind of the authority that we have to run this program.
Yeah, South Carolina is a little, well, I'm sure there are other states that are like that, but I understand South Carolina to be a little unique in that way, where I think universities and state agencies have really restrictive use of available or of cooperative contracts, whereas counties and school districts can have a lot more flexibility and
so
use them.
Yeah, and so if you're a public agency that, maybe you're a small public agency or something like that, and you follow the state procurement code, you would be subject, because you don't have your own, you haven't created those ordinances for your locale. That would be where you might run into that issue here in the state of South Carolina.
Yep. Perfect. Well, those were the questions that were in the chat, and I think that's a perfect place for us to wrap up with 3 minutes to spare. It's incredible. I can't believe we did this on time. We covered a lot today, so we'll make sure that we share some follow-up items with everybody in some emails, and including John's contact information for folks that maybe want to continue the conversation and get into that nitty-gritty. So thank you all for coming. Like I said, if you're new to CoProcure and you'd like to learn a little bit more about how to utilize our search engine to support your own cooperative purchasing strategy, we'd love to set up a time to chat with you, and there will be opportunities to sign up for that in our follow-ups as well. There we go. Also keep an eye out for events as the months go on. We're setting up these monthly events for the next couple months here as we test out, if these are actually really helpful for procurement professionals. So if you have ideas on what you'd love to, what you'd like to see an event on, I'm all ears. You can share that feedback with me directly. But we're going to be hosting these sort of towards the end of the month, each month for the next couple months. So keep an eye out for that as well. All right, John, thank you so much again for joining us and sharing your experience. It's been really awesome to hear you sort of talk through that process. And thank you everybody for joining us for this conversation and taking time out of what I know is a very busy day to listen and ask your questions and learn together as a community. So I appreciate that, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.